Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Einstein. Thank y'all for joining me again tonight as we do today's daily reading from November 22nd of James Allen's Daily Meditations. This, of course, will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that you'll get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading, as this will be the first time that I hear it or read it right here on this podcast with y'all. So, I like the theme of the last few days has been talking about justice and how we reap what we sow. And I love that topic, really. I think it's fantastic. It's one we need to remember. We need to keep in mind these days that we don't always, frankly, keep in mind. We always seem to let that one go and like to play victim of the world. So here we go. Let's see what today's has for us. So this is November 22nd's reading from James Allen's Daily Meditation. Cause and effect cannot be avoided. Consequences cannot be escaped. The good man, having put away all resentment, retaliation, self-seeking, and egotism, has arrived at a state of equilibrium, and has thereby become identified with the eternal and universal equilibrium. Having lifted himself above the blind forces of passion, he understands those forces, contemplates them with a calm, penetrating insight, like the solitary dweller on a mountain who looks down upon the conflict of the storms beneath his feet. For him, injustice has ceased, and he sees ignorance and suffering on the one hand and enlightenment and bliss on the other. He sees that not only do the fool and the slave need his sympathy, but that the fraud and the oppressor are equally in need of it. And so his compassion is extended toward all. Unerring justice presides over all. Wow. I love that. I love the justice, the accurate assessment of things without the judgment, right? That last part where it talked about the fool and the slave and the fraud and the oppressor, that's a beautiful sentiment to keep in mind. And that's what I try to I try to keep that in mind for myself, actually, because it keeps me right sized. It doesn't let me play the victim, doesn't let me play judge, jury, and executioner, right? So I'm excited to talk about that when we get there, but let's start at the beginning again. Cause and effect cannot be avoided. Consequences cannot be escaped. So things are inevitable at the end of the day. When you do something, you will pay a consequence for it, right? That's just how it goes. Regardless of what it is, there will be a consequence. Sometimes it doesn't always look exactly how we think it's going to look, though. Sometimes it's a tax on our spirit, our soul, our mental health. Sometimes it'll be jail. Sometimes it'll be hurting someone else that we love. Sometimes it'll be fear. But there will always be an effect to every cause, and that's what's called a consequence. You choose your consequences. It's not that you get consequences or you don't. You always are choosing what set of consequences you are going to get. If you put in selfishness into the world, you will get the result of your selfishness. If you put selflessness, service to God and others in this world, you will get that back. It's a pretty amazing thing, actually. And it's a frame of mind to consider everything in your life about, because it helps you dismantle that idea that the world's being unfair. And I need that dismantled on a daily basis, pretty much. So the good man having put away, the good man having put away, meaning he was embodying these, meaning he did have these, but having put away all resentment, retaliation, self-seeking, egotism. So all these selfish, self-centered things, excuse me, has arrived at a state of equilibrium. So when we quit seeking for all of these things outside ourselves to make ourselves feel better, to try to get ourselves convinced that we have to do something different, suddenly we reach a state of equilibrium, balance, health, joy, these things that where only equilibrium where only those things can exist. And has thereby become identified with the eternal and universal equilibrium. And that's where it always is, too. When we stop searching and self-seeking, well, then suddenly we find this place of equilibrium, eternal and universal. And it's always there. That's the thing. We just have to balance with it. We have to join with it almost, right? We have to align with it, is what I usually say. And that's a beautiful thing, actually. What a wonderful concept to be able to align with the eternal and universal equilibrium. Having lifted himself above the blind forces of passion, he understands those forces, contemplates them with a calm, penetrating insight like a solitary dweller on a mountain who looks down upon the conflict of the storms beneath his feet. So, this is the part of the journey we all have to take, right? Having lifted himself above the blind forces of passion, he understands those forces, contemplates them with a calm, penetrating insight like a solitary dweller on a mountain who looks down upon the conflict of the storms beneath his feet. We analyze them. We tear them apart. We find the driving force. We find the thing that's holding us back, the compulsion that underrides all of these passions that we have. And I love this. Lifted himself above the blind forces of passion. So again, this is the journey. This is a result of doing this work, of taking a look at things, of being honest with yourself, striving to rid yourself of that selfishness and self-centeredness. It's a whole different thing. And especially when you get used to doing it and when you get better at it, you can look at things with more clarity from a separated eye to actually see what's going on. For him, injustice has ceased. So for the people that have risen out of their passions, there's no injustice anymore. They see the way the world works. They see the way the world operates. And guess what? They don't see the injustice they used to. For him, justice has ceased, and he sees ignorance and suffering. Ignorance and suffering on the one hand, and enlightenment and bliss on the other. That's a powerful picture. In one hand, ignorance and suffering. The other, enlightenment and bliss. I know where I'd want to be. I'll say that much. Enlightenment and bliss. And that's the matter of just honestly taking a look at yourself. Isn't that funny? You could have ignorance and suffering or enlightenment and bliss. It's kind of a cool thing. He sees that not only, this part's awesome, he sees that not only do the fool and slave need his sympathy. Fool and slave, people that are commonly looked at as victims. But the fraud and the oppressor are equally in need of it. So the fraud that made that part was the other half of the fool, the oppressor that was the other half of the slave, are equally in need of it. And so his compassion is extended toward all. So because a sick person, an unhealthy person, can have any of those roles. That's the crazy part about it. So it was hard first at first for me when I heard something about this that I had to wrap myself around with love in those types of situations and extend the people that were viewed as the perpetrators or the predators or anything with the same amount of compassion and understanding that I've granted others for the stealing. It's a whole different thought now. Equally in need of it, and his compassion is extended toward all. Toward all. We don't get picky and choosy, judgmental and condemning on these things. We extend our compassion toward all. And it ends with this line: unerring justice presides over all. And if you can believe that, if you can get yourself behind that statement, you're going to be all right. That's the thing. If you can get yourself behind that statement, if you can actually get an understanding of that statement, you're going to be better off than you realize. Unerring justice presides over all. Just keep that in mind as you go through your day to day. So, all right, there we go. Thank you all for joining me again tonight, and I'll be looking forward to tomorrow's to see what we continue to come up with. I like this theme of justice. It's fantastic. So, until next time, thanks.